Let's listen in.
And a number of police officers. In addition, the grand jury reviewed a number of photographs and video recordings as well as other documentary evidence. After listening to and questioning all of the witnesses and reviewing all of the evidence, the grand jury has determined that there is no basis to charge Tony Stewart with any crimes. His case was therefore no billed by the grand jury. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Were the toxicology reports part of the grand jury testimony, and can you tell us what the results of those reports were for both drivers?
There were no reports that were presented. There is toxicology evidence in the case relating to Kevin Ward that actually indicated that at the time of operation he was under the influence of marijuana. There was no toxicology work performed on Tony Stewart. However, a certified drug recognition expert had interviewed him on the night of the collision and determined that he found no basis to observe any alcohol consumption or impairment by drugs.
What exactly did you weigh, if you could share with us in that testimony?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What are some of the things the grand jury had to weigh?
Well, they had, basically, I made it a goal to present every witness to the grand jury that had any possible relevant evidence to offer. So they did comprise, the witnesses, the various categories of personnel that I've described here. And their job was to determine whether or not, based upon all of the evidence that they heard, all the testimony that they heard, whether there was reasonable cause to believe that Tony Stewart had committed a crime or not. Obviously, their vote was that they did not reach that finding.
Hey, Mike, we had heard that there had been a second video recording of the incident that occurred. What did that video show? Did it give you any other compelling information?
There were two videos. The first one, of course, was the one that everybody saw that had been posted on YouTube, but then the second video was the racetrack's own video. They were relatively similar in what they showed. Actually, the racetrack video was of a little higher quality. Those videos were examined in detail. They were enhanced. They were run through programs that allowed the frames to be isolated. They were run at 75, 50, and 25% speed. They were overlaid with grids and data, and they were a pretty important piece of the evidence that was considered here.
In the result, what did they tell you?
The videos? Well, the videos actually did not demonstrate any aberrational driving by Tony Stewart until the point of impact with Kevin Ward, at which point his vehicle veered to the right up the track as a result of the collision. Prior to that, his course was pretty straight.
You said that Kevin Ward tested positive for marijuana. Was it enough to impair judgment?
The levels that were determined were enough to impair judgment, yes.
In finding Tony Stewart essentially, free of guilt here, are we finding that Kevin Ward Jr. may have been at fault?
The grand jury was, of course, never tasked with the responsibility of anything other than to determine whether there was enough evidence to file charges against Tony Stewart. They were not considering whether anybody else was at fault. However, I am sure from their deliberations and discussions that the fact that Kevin Ward was observed running basically down 2/3 of the track into a hot track in the middle of other cars that were still racing played a big factor in their decision.
Mike, was Tony Stewart afforded the opportunity to testify at this grand jury?
He was given that opportunity.
And what did he say?
I didn't say he testified. I said he was given the opportunity. I really can't tell you who specifically testified or did not testify. And I can't tell you what they said in the grand jury. Okay?
How different is this case than others? I mean, the community was so involved with this as opposed to that.
Well, obviously it's a high-profile case. You have more or less a celebrity in the racing world as the focus of the inquiry, so clearly there was a high level of interest in the case. When all is said and done, that should not and did not make any difference in this particular case. This was, presented to a grand jury. All available evidence was forwarded to them. They were very conscientious in their work on this case. They were actively involved. They asked a lot of questions, including some really excellent probing questions. They were very deliberative, and I'm very satisfied with the attention and conscientious work they put in on this case.
How long did they hear testimony? How long has this been going on?
The better part of 2 days. Yeah.
Did they consider specific charges?
Yes, the charges that were submitted to the grand jury for consideration were manslaughter in the second degree and criminally negligent homicide.
And they would have had to find what for each of those?
They would have had, in New York State, it takes 12 or more votes of 23 grand jurors to return those charges. So while I can't tell you what their votes were, obviously you can deduce the fact that there were not 12 votes for either charge.
But the elements of those two charges?
Well, manslaughter in the second degree is essentially, and I'm just paraphrasing now, but it's essentially criminally reckless conduct. And criminally negligent homicide is just what it sounds. It's criminally negligent conduct. Both of those involve elements of carelessness that are much more rigid and much more demanding than ordinary civil recklessness or negligence involves.
Did the grand jury vote today, or was that?
Their vote was today.
Live coverage for you here from upstate New York. Ontario County District Attorney Michael Tantillo saying that a grand jury impaneled in upstate New York there did not find that there was enough evidence to charge Tony Stewart with a crime for his role in the on-track death of sprint car driver Kevin Ward. Of course, all this happened August the 9th when a car driven by the three-time NASCAR champion Stewart hit and killed Ward during a dirt track race in Canandaigua, New York. Ward had climbed from his car to confront Stewart when he was hit. Live coverage for you there on News Channel 8. 7 minutes after 3 o'clock.